Hi, everyone. Welcome. As you are coming in, if you can put your name, your organization, and where you're calling in from in the chat, that'll give us a sense of where everyone is coming in from. And welcome. Great. We're going to go ahead and get started. As I mentioned, go ahead and put your name, your organization, and your state in the chat. We love to see where everyone's calling in from. My name is Maura Devine, and I'm the National Grassroots Manager for Voices for Healthy Kids and the National Collaborative for Infants and Toddlers. I'm calling in from Denver, Colorado, which is why I have a turtleneck on because it's very cold here today. And I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Tara Hall. Tara?
Hey, everybody. It's great to see you here. And Maura made me think I need to go and look and see the temperature. So I'm calling in from Tampa, Florida. My name is Tara Hall, and it's a chilly 78 here. No joke, people have on jackets already. And I am the Senior Marketing Communications Manager here, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about all things grassroots and Power Prism.
Andrea, next slide, please. So today's objectives are that we're going to introduce the Power Prism as a tool. Some of you might have joined us for previous recordings and trainings around the Power Prism. This is a tool we use here at Voices to move advocacy campaigns and your mission forward. It's an advocacy framework that was created by My Power People LLC and has been adopted by our team. It's a step-by-step plan that will help you recognize and act on opportunities to build momentum in a campaign for change. So today we're going to talk specifically about grassroots and key contacts. This is a high-level overview, and in our other sessions, we will present more in-depth information on our other Power Prism tools. And hopefully at the end, there will be time for questions. Feel free to put those in the chat as well, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end. Next slide, please. So we want you to walk away with some key concepts and ideas about grassroots advocacy and key contacts today. And like I mentioned, this is through the Power Prism model. So we want you to gain a knowledge of the steps to take when planning for this advocacy, including how to do research to support grassroots advocacy and key contact cultivation. We also want you to identify ways to find your grassroots and key contacts, as well as utilizing methods of engagement and mobilization. And then finally, we want to make sure you know how to work with our team to support you in your work. Next slide, please. Many of us have heard the slogan, "Nothing about us without us." Variations of this slogan have been around for centuries, but in modern times, it's best known as the rallying cry for the disability rights movement, which grew out of the work in South Africa in the 1980s. Simply put, this concept reminds us that no policy should be decided without the full and direct participation of members of the group that are affected by the policy. Next slide. And of course, grassroots is a really important part of this. It's critical that campaigns working to improve community conditions consistently seek leadership, counsel, guidance, and practical feedback from members of communities that are intended to benefit from the proposed changes. And this is more than offering just a seat at the table. It means sharing power, decision-making, and making sure that they also own the table. Next slide. The first step of building power for your advocacy is answering 3 key questions. Everything you do in your campaign should be informed and guided by your answers. And when you attend our other trainings, you'll hear us say this over and over again because it's really important for framing your work. Next slide. It's always tempting to want to jump right into methods and strategies, but winning policy change campaigns are those that are guided by these 3 key questions. The first is, what do you want? What exactly is the policy change that you're seeking to address your issue? And second is, why do you want it? What data makes a case for that policy change, and what's the reason behind the change that you're asking for? And finally, who has the power to give it to you? Which specific decision makers in state or local or even federal government have the power to make that change? The answer to these questions can change throughout a campaign and you'll need to pivot. So it's helpful to really get into the habit of revisiting these from time to time throughout your campaign process. And once you have those answers, it's time to come up with strategies for each of the power tools that will influence those decision makers. as I said, we're going to dig in today specifically on grassroots and key contacts. Next slide. But I want to talk just broadly about the power prism because influencing decision makers is all about making it easier for them to give you what you want. The power prism is built on 6 power tools of advocacy that help apply pressure on decision makers to reach our policy goals. So these 6 tools are research and data collection, coalition building and maintenance, fundraising and development, grassroots and key contacts where you are today, media advocacy, we'll be doing a training on that in November, and decision maker advocacy. Next slide, please. Every elected and appointed official is charged with representing people either from a specific district or across the city or state. These public servants are supposed to help government work for us and with us, right? That's why we elect them, and we hope that's what they're doing when they're in their elected position. They're especially keen on appealing to people who live in the district they represent, because those are the people who literally have the power to hire and fire them at election time. And as you're aware, next week, that's going to be another opportunity for many of us across the country to make those decisions. Grassroots power, when organized and prepared, can overcome even the most well-funded corporate interests.
Exactly. And so let's go to the next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about research for grassroots and key contacts and the importance that your grassroots advocates have in the direction of your campaign. Next slide, please. So we actually we offer multiple different power prism models, which Maura just told you about. In the research and data collecting training, we go much more in depth into this. So if that's something you feel like a skill you want to hone, make sure you tune into that one when we offer it. But it's essential to know the legislative process and the timeline for your particular policy so that you can identify your lawmaker targets and the grassroots and key contacts who influence them. Grassroots advocates are generally interested in the process of policy change. So don't forget to inform them where you are in the process as you move along the way. Next slide. So Maura told you a little bit about our third question. Who has the power to give you what you want? That's a really broad question and it can feel overwhelming, but we can hone in on that a little bit better if we dig in by asking a couple of more specific questions. Number one, which specific decision makers have the power to make the change that you're seeking? And depending on your area, these key decision makers may be leaders of committees that your legislation may initially be heard in. They might be city council leaders or other decision makers. And in order to build effectively grassroots advocacy, you need to know who your key decision makers are so you can identify them as well as their districts and areas of representation. You're going to want to start to build a plan to mobilize voters in those districts as you advocate for your issue. Again, that hiring and firing, and they care about what their constituents have to say. Lastly, you want to ask, what groups, organizations, and issues are your key decision makers most connected to? And this research is what will help you build grassroots advocates and key contact groups that can most effectively advocate for your issue. Decision makers are most likely to listen to their own voters. That's the grassroots portion, right? As well as the people they already know or who have credibility with them. That's the key contact. So we don't want to leave out this important issue. And it actually reminds me of one of the first exercises I did in Grassroots, where we had a room full of advocates and we asked them to start power mapping, start mapping those influences, those pathways of influence. And it was incredible to see just how well connected everyone is at finding the lawmakers that they want to influence. All it takes is a little research. Power mapping is critical for your advocacy work. So what you'd want to do is determine a handful of key decision makers at each step of the process, and then research possible pathways of influence to those decision makers. It's easier now than ever to do with internet. So looking on Google, looking on social media platforms, and another way that we've recently started exploring is actually using AI to help you map and figure out exactly how connected you are to certain decision makers. And it's also a way to help you understand what your decision makers care about. So once you kind of outline all of that, you want to cross-reference those promising pathways of influence with assets that you and your campaign partners have already outlined. So personal relationships, common interests, donors, and more. And so we've got a quick exercise for you guys to do. If we're able, are we going to paste that in the chat, Andrea? Yep, there it is. If you click on this Pathways of Influence worksheet, and feel free to bookmark this resource. It's something that you can use down the line. But it's a really great tool in helping you map out how connected you are. And so in this group exercise, I'm wondering if anyone here today is working on, maybe it's your plan for now, maybe it's your plan for when legislative sessions begin, but is anyone working on trying to make connections with a decision maker? Trying to figure out how you're connected with them, because we'd like to use you as a case study. We'd like to do a group activity where everyone starts looking for those pathways of influence for you. So do we have maybe a volunteer? And we would just need the name of the lawmaker or decision maker. And if we don't, I can think of someone. Oh, great, Shay. Do you want to come off mute really quick and give us the name, and then I'll put some directions in the chat for folks?
Hi, good morning or good afternoon already in Colorado too. Um, we are working on building a early childhood and putting a measure on the ballot to fund early childhood locally. So I think one of our decision makers would probably be Senator Mark Snyder.
So Senator Mark, and I'm going to probably spell the name wrong, but we're going to definitely want to double check that. Mark Snyder in Colorado.
That is correct.
Okay, perfect. Just want to make sure I have that right. All right, so let's do some quick Google searches. If we can make this like a group activity where everyone just dives in for the next 2 or 3 minutes so we can help Shay out here. Let's find, can we list social media account? Can we find his press person? Link to those press releases, either on his website or on the legislature's website. Can we find some issues he cares about? And I'm actually really quickly going to show you how you can use AI if you like it. Here at AHA and Voices for Healthy Kids, we primarily use Copilot, but there are several models out there. Gemini is with Google, ChatGPT. And just, one caveat, whenever you're using these types of tools, you're definitely going to want to double check to make sure what you put in is, what you're getting is accurate. But as you're coming up with social media handles, press releases, links that might be useful to Shay, plop those into the chat. And then I'm going to show you one way that you can use AI to actually help you. So in AI, I typed in, what are some of the policy priorities surrounding early childhood that Senator Mark Snyder in Colorado cares about? And this is the answer. I'm going to paste it just as is that came out of my AI, keeping in mind that we may have to, go through and verify all of this information. But the AI is a really great way, it's maybe not something that you want to use to replace your job, but if you're someone who doesn't have, let's say, an executive assistant or a secretary who can do some of these research tasks for you, AI can be really helpful. So key priorities: investing in early childhood and universal pre-K. We've got recruiting and retention of early childhood educators, linking early childhood to affordability for families, education funding and K-12 linkage. And then there's some messaging tips here. And it looks like others are contributing. So as you keep finding those, please keep putting them in the chat, because this will be really helpful to Shay, but it's also an activity as you're seeing how other people are finding answers, you can use those same tools to help you as you are making your pathways of influence in your own work. So Andrea, let's go to the next slide. So as we talked about previously, identifying key decision makers at each step of your bill's progress is critical. Your bill will likely go through several steps, so it's not just about the leadership of one committee, but probably several. Your bill's sponsor can be helpful in letting you know which committees your bill might end up in, so make sure you're keeping good contact with them. When it comes to pathways of influence, once you figure all of that out, it's really a time to learn as much about that person as you can from public sources and conversations, kind of like what we just did. And it can be with, what you find online, but also what you find with people who might know this person personally or professionally. Your research will uncover valuable pathways of influence to this lawmaker and will dramatically improve your ability to appeal to them based on their own motivated self-interests or possible mutual contacts or relationships, including grassroots and grass tops advocates. And sometimes this is called target research. For example, your research might uncover that a lawmaker's child attends a particular elementary school, or that their spouse is a pediatrician, or that there's a Boys and Girls Club that just so happens to be right in their district, or that they're on the board of the state conference of the NAACP. All of those facts may become pathways of influence and sources of grassroots and grass tops advocates. You just have to look for those connections. Next slide, please. Something else that you're going to want to make sure you're doing, and this is critical, we can't say this enough, is to make sure you take a moment to pause and make sure that there's community voice in any policy work that you're doing. If you are solving issues within a community, you want to make sure that the people who are part of that community are involved. While most campaigns do have the time to think about this work as part of, like, for example, their grant application with us, with Voices for Healthy Kids, it's important that we don't overlook it in our coalition building and in our grassroots building so that we can continue to make room for community-based organizations and voices. Ideally, when an organization might be applying for a Voices for Healthy Kids grant, they're already thinking about that community and they have a strong sense of what the community wants and needs and believes. We really can't say enough how critical that is. And so as you're making those pathways of influence, let's say you find out that there is a Boys and Girls Club in that person's community, in the lawmaker's community that you're trying to outreach to. Maybe you connect with someone at the Boys and Girls Club to have them also be a part of that decision. Really what it comes down to is finding and building trust with community, and community-led organizations should be a top priority for you as you're doing this grassroots work. Next slide, please. So another benefit of working with community is they can really give you a behind-the-scenes look at something like opposition. Opposition can take many forms, and folks who are on the ground and in the community know it all too well. And so opposition might look like industry interests that oppose policies that impact their bottom line, for example, or it can be key decision makers and peers who might oppose policy that they feel impacts their district in one way or another. So understanding who has historically opposed your issue and working with your bill sponsor to understand their sense of who the opposition could be will help you form a coalition that counters all of those potential arguments. Now, it can be tempting for advocates to think that you don't have opposition because of the goodness of the cause. I'll never forget during the pandemic when we opened up and started serving universal school meals for all, everyone seemed to be on board. And then it slowly started going away. And I even remember reading articles of some folks who were against it and thinking, who in the world could be against healthy school meals for all? It exists, it's out there. And so knowing who those people are or those organizations are will help you strengthen any arguments that you might have to support the bill or legislation that you're trying to pass. There are at least two sides to every story, and it's important to know those. Otherwise, we wouldn't need to have these elaborate campaigns to make change. So, for example, just to kind of get your wheels spinning here, or wheels turning, I should say here, if you're working to increase public benefits, such as SNAP incentives or WIC or Head Start, you may run into opposition from organizations who oppose tax increases of any kind. Doesn't matter what they're for. Or if you're working to increase access to early care and education, you may face opposition from lawmakers who feel like the community is already addressing the issue through local programs and they don't need additional resources. Or you could be working on paid family and medical leave policies, and you may run into lawmakers that believe it's just too expensive, or even, I've heard this on multiple occasions, that moms should be the ones who are staying home and taking care of the kids, that you don't need parental leave for their partners. So there can be all kinds of opposition that simply fear that if you win, they lose. This appears when there are powerful interests fighting for the same limited resources. In state and local budget battles, winning funding for you may come at the expense of someone else's budget priority or pet project. And this opposition can be based in fear and in fact. And so it's important to think through where those pain points might be early on and often, so that way you can try to neutralize those forces through relationship building and information sharing. Next slide, please. Knowledge is power. It's power every step of the way. So researching those pathways of influence, while it does take a bit of time up front, it can save you a lot of time on the back end by helping you understand which tactics, strategies, messengers are going to be most ample to help you succeed with the decision maker. Maura?
Thanks, Tara. That was great. Let's talk a little bit now about grassroots identification. How do you find those folks who will support your campaign? Next slide, please. And one more, Andrea, please. Once you know who your key lawmakers are, as Tara explained, you really want to find out who are the grassroots folks in their districts. Do we have a good sense of the community in those districts? And what will be the plan to build credibility with key decision makers, voters, district businesses, and district key civic organizations? Of course, we can't do this work everywhere, but we have to do this work in the key districts where we know we can have influence. So you want to make it a priority to identify grassroots advocates from key decision makers districts. This includes adult voters, local businesses, local nonprofits, and even students, which are sometimes overlooked but are a very powerful voting bloc. So to help, you can survey all your coalition partner organizations to see if they have contact lists of members and supporters, and that might include the home address information that you can easily sort by legislative district, and if they will allow these people to be contacted on behalf of your campaign. Within one of our Voices for Healthy Kids campaigns, we actually have a grassroots network that if you're a grantee, you can leverage. And again, at the end, we'll talk to you about how you can engage with us a little bit more. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Next slide, please. But let's say you're just getting started or you just don't have an extensive list of grassroots advocates. So you want to plan campaign activities that will help you recruit grassroots advocates from those key districts we talked about. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. It's really a process, but even starting with 5 to 10 grassroots advocates from key decision makers districts that are willing to reach out to them to support your issue will make lawmakers take notice and act on an issue. Hearing from constituents is really important to lawmakers. Again, back to that idea that you actually are the ones who decide if they keep their job or not. So just remember, you do have that leverage. If you're someone that already has a lot of experience with grassroots, you might want to think about just thinking bigger and how do you find larger groups of grassroots advocates in the key districts. So one good strategy you could utilize is to get or purchase the voter file from the city or town. Or if you're part of a coalition, having your coalition members do some door-to-door canvassing to meet active voters in those key districts and ask their opinions about your issue. If interested, perhaps they'll sign a text or send a postcard or be willing to get more information. Using a voter file really narrows the universe to make sure you're talking to people who vote, because it's, again, voters who have the most power. If you have a larger campaign budget, that might allow you to do some direct mailing or even some digital ad placement. You can send them a piece of mail about your campaign or do targeted digital campaigns that allows them to take easy action to contact those lawmakers. Next slide. Another tool that you can think about using, and again, this is going to be budget based, is this idea of a point and click action networks. You can see just sort of on the screen what that might look like. Some of you might have received emails or text messages where you click through and then you're taken to a page, something we do here at Voices for Healthy Kids, and it allows you to fill in your information and directly connect with your lawmaker, either through a click to call method or a text connection, or even sending an email. It's a great way to introduce people to grassroots advocacy, and it lets you build lists of people around the issues you're working on. So then when the time comes, you can reach out to those advocates, keep them updated, and help them take action on other important milestones or changes during a campaign. So I just want to take a minute here, and I'm curious of those on the call, how many of you are actually using some type of online tool, whether it's a software system like Quorum or Every Action, for example, or if you're just using Google Forms to collect contact information. Put a 1 in the chat if you're using an online tool, put a 2 if you're not, and if you are using one and if you're comfortable, please share the name of what you're using. I think it would be helpful for everyone to see what tools people are using, if any. Okay, I see a Quorum, Every Action, great. Congress Plus, Google Forms, great. So we kind of have a spread of experience here with Quorum, Congress Plus, Every Action, Google Forms. It's okay if you're not using something, just to be clear. I did want to point out that if you are working in an organization or just getting started and you don't have resources, Google Forms is a great way to get started because it's free. You can set up an account and you don't have to worry about spending money to maintain a network, whereas some of the other tools mentioned, we use Quorum, for example, are tools that are available with larger budgets. They're very robust, but Google Forms is really nuts and bolts and can help you secure the information of your advocates and then start to filter and sort your list so you can contact people. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. It is important, as we mentioned, for lawmakers to hear from their constituents beyond online action. So that is important. It's a great way for you to gather data. It's a great way for you to connect with your lawmakers. But those one-to-one contacts, those more personal contacts actually are very powerful. And that's through phone calls, letters, and even visits to lawmakers. Just 5 phone calls can make lawmakers pay attention and act on an issue. And insider tip, I do know that when you're calling lawmakers' offices, they actually, sometimes they will score certain advocacy efforts a little bit higher when they realize picking up a phone can be a little more intimidating for people, and sometimes that's more powerful. If someone's willing to do that, then lawmakers will typically see that as a significant issue they need to pay attention to. Your organization can use online networks, as I mentioned, and you can reach out to them that way. And then also find those who are willing to take those offline actions through phone calls, letter writings, and as well as just showing up at decision makers' offices or town halls to talk to them directly. Next slide. It's also critical to build a diverse grassroots base that includes communities that are most impacted by the proposed policy that we talked about at the beginning. If your organization isn't led and represented by those that are most impacted by the conditions that you wish to change, then do the work to build meaningful and mutual collaborations with organizations that are. Your work to learn the priorities of a community and the history of a community will also help lay the groundwork for inclusive grassroots base building. Next slide. So when thinking about your grassroots plan, we need to find out who our grassroots are in key districts and also whether we have folks in our grassroots space that are communities that are impacted, as I mentioned. Sometimes that early grassroots work needs to be some deep, old-fashioned community organizing, outreach, and engagement. We want to make sure this grassroots work to introduce the issue is more high touch than high tech. Even though there are great tools out there, it's those interpersonal relationships that really become the most powerful part of your movement. And we may sometimes be the right people to do the community organizing, but sometimes we may not be. And it's okay to provide funding when possible to other organizations that can lead an activity on behalf of the campaign. So for example, let's say you have a faith community or other community-based organization, and it could be funded to do the inviting and conversation leading if they're seen as leaders in the community. And a campaign representative from your organization could come and just provide the information to that group. So think about building into your campaign plan work, identifying those trusted intermediaries on the ground to do some of the convening work for you. And remember, this doesn't have to be done everywhere in the state. You just want to focus on those key decision makers districts. So a couple of other ideas that might be helpful are hosting a lunch at a faith community meeting, perhaps after a service on a Sunday, to talk about the issue and why you're involved, and then asking people if they'd like to join or stay connected to get more information. And again, this doesn't have to be high tech. You could literally just have a clipboard and a sheet of paper for people to put their name and contact information. You can conduct door-to-door canvassing, which I mentioned before, and have a one-pager that you just print in your office, describing the issue and letting people know how to get involved. If you're in a community where you know there's multiple languages spoken, having that information available that way is very helpful. And then giving them ways to connect through Facebook or email is great. You could also provide a lunch and learn at a large employer that has an employee base that's populated by folks in a key legislative district. And just be creative. There's lots of ways to get out into the community and leverage those connections that you have. Next slide. So once you've identified your grassroots advocates, it's important to know how to engage them. And the key to that engagement is understanding why your activists are interested in your issue and also how they communicate. So understanding that why can help you transform your advocates into leaders that you rely on to build relationships with those decision makers. Those leaders can end up being the champions for your cause and help convey the message to media and also share their personal stories in support of your issue. And there are a lot of ways to do this. So I'll just talk about a couple of them. One would be to send an email out and ask people to tell you why it's important to them to fight for whatever the issue is that you're focused on. Ask them why it's important, and no matter what they respond, even if they say, I'm really not interested, or it's not important to me anymore, or I am so passionate about this issue, please tell me how to get involved, you always want to thank them after they send you a response for just taking the time to do that. Another way to engage is going to in-person events where you set up a table and maybe have postcards or a banner or something that asks people to tell you what their why is. Why do they care about this issue? And again, always get their name, their address, and if possible, a phone number or email address so you can follow up. Some other ideas are if you have connections to a school, a boys and girls club, a faith community, a senior center within one of those key districts, ask those leaders if you could host a listening session and just set up time to come and listen and let community members share their stories and what is important to them. That'll give you a lot of great intel. You'll also understand how people want to be contacted and other ways that you might engage with them as the campaign moves forward. And also note that, as you've seen, the world is always rapidly changing in the high-tech space, so the tools we use to communicate can change quickly. So it's really critical to pay attention to that and know what your demographics are looking for and how they respond to things. So if you aren't using email regularly, then email campaigns aren't going to help you very much. If advocates are texting a lot, you might want to think about doing a texting campaign. Are they using social media? That can be great, but a lot of people aren't using social media. So think about how you can reach them that way. You really just want to think about finding people and meeting them where they are so that you can communicate with them effectively. Next slide. Tara's going to talk now about key contacts and how to identify them.
Yeah, so when we're thinking about speaking with advocates, there are two main types of advocates. You've got your grassroots advocates. Those are the people who have a connection to elected officials because they're a constituent. All of us can be grassroots advocates in that sense. Hearing from constituents is important to lawmakers. Again, the hiring and firing of them. So they do want to know what the people who are voting for them have to say. Key contacts or grass tops are those who, by virtue of their special expertise, their position, their personal relationships, are more likely to get direct information from a decision maker. You can think of them almost like influencers, to borrow a social media term, and they can have an outsized impact on those lawmakers. Grass tops can be cultivated through research into a lawmaker's interests and affiliations and forming relationships with leaders in those organizations. Grass tops can also be discovered by asking your grassroots advocates about relationships they have with decision makers or those connected to decision makers. And you might actually find that you're surprised by the connections your grassroots already have when you do the pathways of influence. I'll never forget doing one of those exercises in a messaging training that we did, and one of the folks in the audience made connections over to a lawmaker he was trying to influence for early care and education, who was connected to his brother-in-law that he didn't even know. And so that was a quick in for him to be able to connect to that lawmaker. So always thinking of those types of ways can help you make those important connections to grass tops or key contacts. So identifying grass tops and key contacts from each of the decision makers' districts should also be a priority of yours. These influential people are those who have already have relationships with key decision makers and who can build on those relationships. And they're also willing to advocate on behalf of the campaign you're working on. Because there's only a handful of key decision makers at any point of the campaign, it's unlikely that one organization knows enough grass tops advocates alone. So this is a critical activity for a coalition as well. So make sure that when you're doing this exercise with your organization, you're also expanding it out and presenting this to the coalitions that you might be a part of and having them also perform the exercise. One of our tools that might be useful is the personal relationship profile, and it can be built into your campaign pretty early on. We're going to put that in the chat. Andrea, if you could stick that in there, that would be helpful so folks can start looking over that. This is a tool that can be used once key decision makers are identified, and it's essentially a survey to see where coalition partners may have positive personal relationships with people in a specific sphere of influence, including certain elected officials, media, business community, and faith community, as well as issue expertise and personal lived experience. So as you can open that up and just take a couple minutes to look over it. If you'd like to, you can use maybe the next 60 seconds or so to review it and answer some of the questions. This is exactly that story I just told you about when I was working on an early care and education media training and trying to figure out how and who do we know in the Capitol building and how do we know them? This is the tool that we used, and it was really helpful in helping people really visualize just how closely connected they are to certain officials, often by one or two individuals that they knew. So yeah, keep this handy and definitely use it for your own organization and potential coalitions. So we can go to the next slide, Andrea. Thank you. Your coalition organizations are an asset. While it's unlikely that the CEO or executive director of many of your most influential coalition partners are involved in the day-to-day coalition work, they may be able to mobilize as grassroots advocates to reach out to lawmakers in support of your issue. So make sure you're having a really candid and honest conversation with your coalition members around making this ask of their CEOs, and determine which of your coalition member leaders might be willing and able to reach out to lawmakers about that issue so they're ready to be mobilized when needed. Next slide, please. Something else that's important when we're talking about grass tops, of course, but especially grassroots, you want to make sure that they are updated on legislation. Advocates will stay more engaged with you and your campaign and understand the process if they receive progress updates. This is especially important. You don't want to just be the only time they receive an email or a call to action is when you need something. So making them feel like it's a partnership, because it is one, is important. As Maura also spoke about, showing gratitude. Thank your advocates every single time that they take an action or something good happens. And one thing we've talked about at Voices for Healthy Kids is we're really used to celebrating the big wins once we have a bill signed or a policy passed. And it's important to share those with your advocates, but also consider sharing the little moments with them. Maybe you had a social media win, or maybe someone had a really successful meeting. Sharing that story and showing that gratitude goes a really long way. Lastly, you want to make sure you treat every advocate like a long-term asset, not just a short-term convenience. No one wants to feel used. No one wants to feel like they're a means to an end. So if you're an effective advocate, this isn't going to be the last campaign you work on. And so keeping those long-term relationships with your advocates is key. How you treat them and how you include them, and really everyone involved in your campaign, will impact your future campaigns as well. All advocates should be treated with respect, of course, but as valued members of the campaign.
Next slide. And on that note, one more, Andrea, please. You really want to, in addition to appreciation, you really want to empower your advocates with training. They, when they're going to meet with or call lawmakers, they really appreciate those tools to be trained on because it allows them to learn more about the proposed policy change, the political process, and how they can help. And the more empowered people are, the more effective they are going to be as grassroots advocates and more likely to ultimately become your greatest champions. And this can be done with a group that's been convened by coalition partners and community-based organizations as part of lobby days, or you can even have a Zoom call like this. I know on some of the campaigns that I've worked on in the past, we've actually had a lot of Zoom calls where we've convened and we've shared information, resources, data, answered questions for advocates who might be nervous about contacting lawmakers. It really allows them to be part of that community and feel much more empowered in the work that they're doing. So you want to also think about making sure you're planning these events around their schedules and their location. So if your issue is something that you know that moms, for example, are going to be some of your most effective grassroots advocates, you don't want to set up a call or a meeting right during school drop-off time or right after school lets out. You might do it maybe late morning and have a coffee for those women to get together and talk about the issue and learn more about how they can be effective advocates. So again, start by asking them why they care about the issue or what their connection to the issue is. It's another opportunity to deepen their engagement with the campaign and also foster relationship building between the campaign and them, but also among the advocates themselves. And help them come up with their own elevator speech to help them make their case. We like to use a tool called the 2793 rule. Andrea is going to drop a link in the chat here as well so you have access to that. This was created by some Vermont lawmakers years ago, and the 2793 rule requires you to make your persuasive point in no more than 27 words within a time frame that's no longer than 9 seconds with no more than 3 points discussed. I want to emphasize those 3 points because that's really important. It's one of the most effective ways you can communicate your message. These limitations help us focus on understanding how to connect to our listener. And this message is not the place to present your entire appeal. So you don't want it to be this long statement about all the data and reasons why. It's really staying within those parameters. It's very effective, and it's really meant to just hook the listener in wanting to hear more. Trained advocates are the biggest assets to any campaign, and they help you with meeting with lawmakers. They can testify at public hearings. They can speak to other advocates or potential advocates in the community and recruit them. They can write letters to the editor, and they can be some of your most influential social media influencers that Tara mentioned. Next slide, please. So we talked a little bit about the importance of moving online advocates to offline action. That still does take that personal outreach I talked about. It helps when your email and text go out from a real person who works on your campaign rather than just the name of your organization. So for example, if you happen to be in our network, you often will see emails from me, and yes, I actually write them and send them out to you. People feel connected later when that same person then invites them to a community conversation or lawmaker meeting because they've already developed a bit of a relationship, and it allows them to meet that person in real life and further establishes trust and credibility and puts a face with a name. If advocates share their personal story back to that appreciation, you want to make sure that you thank them personally with a phone call or handwritten note at the very least. When people share those personal stories, sometimes they're very emotional, sometimes they're very vulnerable. It's really important that you take the time to appreciate them for sharing that personal information. And while you have many competing campaign demands, taking that time to reach out is critical. They're really important to the campaign. One phone call or lawmaker meeting is worth many, many emails. Like I mentioned before, I've heard from inside that those phone calls that people make are often seen as they're weighted higher because they know what it takes for people to have the courage to do that. So the campaign should think about your grassroots advocates and who might be involved with the campaign, and just try and find the people who would be the best spokespeople based on that. Key contacts may also benefit from outreach by leaders of your coalition. So think about, if you're in a coalition, think about who you can identify as the best leaders who you can cultivate relationships with. Having personal contact with a campaign member or leader can help advocates feel important and engaged in this campaign and beyond. And as Tara mentioned earlier, this isn't going to be probably your last campaign, or if you end up not getting the policy passed that you hoped for, you might want to re-engage those people. So building those relationships is really important. Next slide. I talked a little bit about those personal stories. These are really important to illustrate the problem. Data is critical. You want to kind of build the case for why a policy change is important, but those personal stories are really what are going to persuade lawmakers to take action. Real people who have a personal connection to the issue are critically important to convincing decision makers, the media, and the general public and voters
the fifth
that
grade
change is needed.
standards and make sure we're hitting.
Grassroots advocates who are willing to share their personal stories and connection to the issue, as I mentioned, are extremely helpful. So that's why I took a moment here to just emphasize this. Not everyone will feel comfortable, as I said. They will feel more vulnerable, but those that do can be your greatest champions. So we actually have a tool called Telling Your Own Personal Story. I think we have a link for that as well. And this is a way for you to, if you're the person that's going to tell your own personal story, you can actually start to draft that there. It's also a tool that you can use for your advocates for your campaign to help them think about how they might tell their story. And it is powerful. We all have reasons why we do certain work. Helping someone frame that in the context of the campaign is really helpful. Also remember that if you, like I said earlier, if you're working in a community where multiple languages are spoken, or the policy issue is specific to a particular group of people who speak other languages, make sure that your worksheet is translated into that language for them so that they can share their story in their native language. Next slide. The key to all of this is you want to eliminate as many hurdles as possible to reach out to key decision makers. You can help make it easier for grassroots and key contact advocates by providing templates for the kind of outreach you want them to take, including giving them the names, the titles, and the emails, even phone numbers of lawmakers. You can provide them with sample scripts for phone calls and emails and even text messages. If you're using an online tool like Every Action or Quorum, you can pre-build this in for yourselves. You can also provide proper ways to address lawmakers. That's not common knowledge for everyone and can sometimes be very intimidating. Also providing the names of bills and bill numbers so that your advocates are referencing the legislation or proposed legislation correctly is empowering for them. And then also giving them the information about what the bills will actually accomplish. Having this at their fingertips will help advocates feel confident and ready to engage. Next slide. And if you are already a very experienced advocate, this might seem strange, but most people actually don't know who their state representative, city councilor, or town meeting member is. I'm always surprised in my local community. A lot of my neighbors don't know who represents us. So make it easy for them. Provide a link for them to look up their lawmaker, or ask them for their home or voting address, and you help do the work for them and look it up for them. Make it a habit to ask for the home and voting address at community meetings, and make sure people are empowered to know who represents them at the different levels of government. And make sure that grassroots advocates and key contacts reaching out to key decision makers on behalf of the campaign have everything they need, like I talked about earlier, to pick up that phone, whether it's phone numbers, scripts, or other information that'll help them be powerful in those conversations. We also have a lot of digital resources on our website to help online advocates look up their own lawmakers. Next slide. Tara's going to talk about mobilization.
Take myself off mute. So this is where your homework around policy process in your area comes in. You'll want to know the key milestones for your proposed legislation and be able to mobilize your grassroots and key contacts to reach out to key decision makers in support of the bill. So typically, we have grassroots advocates focus only on their own lawmakers. But that's different when our bill is in a committee, because the committee is making decisions across the entire city or even the entire state, not only in the district they serve. In most cases, we can invite all of our grassroots members to contact committee members to push the bill through this stage of the process. Make sure that you craft an email template or a call script for advocates to use. Again, consider using advocates to make these phone calls. These are highly impactful for lawmakers. Even 5 phone calls can feel like a lot of support for a bill in committee. Next slide. You can also look to other campaign-related events to build advocacy power for your campaign. You can look at these events as opportunities to mobilize or recruit grassroots and key contacts. If anything happens that is related to your campaign, you can think about how this can be an opportunity to inspire advocates to action or gain more advocates for your issue. For example, if the media publishes a story about your issue, you can use the event to maybe ask advocates to reach out to their key decision makers or their own lawmakers with a link to the article and a brief statement on how your proposed legislation might address the issue. Or you can ask advocates to share their personal story in support of the issue, especially if it addresses opposition arguments. You can ask advocates to draft a letter to the editor in response to an article. And if you liked an article, you can urge advocates to send a thank you note to a reporter via social media or an email. And I actually have an example of that we just did this week, where someone, a powerful business person in the community, wrote an op-ed for a business journal, and we had one of our grantees reach out and send a thank you note to him, just saying, thanks for putting yourself out there about this really important issue. It's a nice way to build a bridge. Nearly everything that happens within the life cycle of a campaign can provide a good hook for recruiting, mobilizing, energizing grassroots advocates. Don't just limit grassroots and grass tops asking for votes. They can do so much more, and they will if they're asked and if they're coached. So just a couple things as we get ready to wrap up. You want to use feel-good moments like thank you emails. I'm sorry, Andrea, next slide, please. So you want to use those feel-good moments like thank you emails or texts as an opportunity to engage with online advocates. You can create contests or events for students that enlist local lawmakers or businesses to be participants, or you can even consider hosting a Meet Your Lawmaker event in the district. And we're all very familiar with Zoom, so if an in-person meeting doesn't work, Zoom just might. You just want to get creative and use all these moments and events to describe the why. Next slide, please.
So just remember that grassroots cultivation and support takes work, but you are building power for your campaign in ways that will pay off in every aspect of your campaign work. When grassroots advocates are given the tools and support they need to thrive, they can become key contacts and grassroots advocates in the future before you know it, because they've developed their own personal relationships with key decision makers through the opportunities provided by the campaign. And that's a great outcome. And they will also be a great contact for you to continue to learn about those lawmakers in the process. One final thought, and it is an important one, so I don't want to skip it, is to keep in mind that grassroots advocates can become your very best sources of information out in the fields. They can get away with asking questions that you or your lobbyist might not dare to ask. So they might ask things like, do you have any personal experience with maternal health challenges or lack of paid family and medical leave? Have you had difficulty finding high quality, affordable childcare? And you'll be surprised, because they're all people too, that they often have personal experiences themselves that impact their lives as well. They might also ask what are their favorite sources of news and information about health. What are some of the biggest challenges facing this legislative session, and how might we overcome it? There's a whole series of questions. I know we only have a few more minutes, but these kinds of questions are important so that you always have that constant feedback loop and a way for Grassroots and Grassroots advocates to tell you the details about what they learned during their meetings and calls with lawmakers. You can provide a feedback form or even a voicemail option for your advocates to leave information with your campaign. And also always ask your advocates what they think needs to be done to influence their lawmaker. They usually have great and practical advice for us. I know we only have 2 minutes left. I want to make sure that you've seen the survey that's popped up. If you could take a minute or two and just fill that out, that helps us as we continue to improve these trainings. And if it's okay with Andrea and Tara, if there are any questions before we jump off, I'd love to be able to answer them if we can. So if you do have any, you can drop them in the chat. If we're out of time or you don't have any questions, but something pops up, please feel free to reach out to us. Andrea, I don't know if we have an email address that we're providing, but if we do, it'd be great for folks to be able to email us directly. Thank you for spending time with us today. We appreciate it.